what's up guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, then welcome to our little corner of the internet. Today we are going to Cleveland because we're watching a video titled Cleveland's City Layout Explained. I've heard a lot of things about Cleveland, not necessarily good if I remember correctly. I think a lot of people don't like Cleveland. I might be wrong though, but you know, I don't know. I guess I'll see throughout this video what it looks like. I like everything usually, so we'll see. But without further ado, let's see what this video is about.
This is Cleveland. I'm Daniel, and today we're looking at Cleveland's map to figure out why the city looks the way it does. Cleveland is usually famous for its industrial past, and depending on who you ask, a long period of decline followed by a quieter comeback. It's also the hometown of the greatest artists of all time. But today we're focusing on a different topic, and that's the city's layout, because that's where Cleveland's story becomes really visible. We'll start with the geography, why
So not so bad, right? Not so bad?
Cleveland sits where it does, and what made this location so powerful in the first place. Then we'll move into the urban form, how industry shaped huge parts of the city's footprint and why the layout feels the way it does today. And finally, we'll talk about mobility. How all of this translates into car dependency, where transit works surprisingly well and where it really doesn't. In the end, we'll also rate the city in 4 distinct categories and find out if it's a great city or not. This will set the foundation for what will hopefully become a long-lasting series, so if you enjoy this kind of stuff, be sure to stick around until the end. I'm Daniel, and you're watching Cleveland City Layout Explained. Chapter 1, Geography. Alright, so let's start with the basics. Why did Cleveland become such a big industrial hub that now populates a metropolitan area of 2.17 million people, even as the city proper stands at 365,000? So Cleveland...
What does metro population mean then?
Sits on the southern shore of Lake Erie, a part of the Great Lakes system, which effectively acts like an inland ocean, connecting deep into the North American continent. That alone already makes this location valuable, but the real key is right here, the Cuyahoga River. I hope I pronounced that right. And yes, it's very bendy for the bendy people.
What? It is.
Instead of flowing straight into the lake, it curves its way through the landscape. That bend created a naturally protected harbor, which was ideal for early shipping and industry. So you've got a massive lake for long distance transport and a river that brings...
What is that line on the ocean, guys? Why is there a line over there? You see that? What on earth is that?
You've got a massive lake for long distance transport and a river that...
You can see it here as well. Looks like a... I don't know. What is that?
Brings goods inland. That combination is incredibly powerful.
This looks beautiful though.
And it gets even better in the early 1800s, when the Ohio and the Erie Canal connects Cleveland southward to the Ohio River system. Now, suddenly, Cleveland becomes a link between the Great Lakes and the Mississippi watershed. At that point, the city is perfectly positioned. Raw materials like iron ore arrive via the lake, coal comes up from the south, and Cleveland sits right in between, turning into one of the key industrial hubs in the United States. And the land around the water, it's mostly flat, with a gentle rise away from the lake. No mountains, no major natural barriers, which makes building and expanding the city relatively easy. That's on one hand great for growth, but on the other, it also means there's nothing really stopping the city from spreading outward later on. So even in the geography, you can already see both sides. A location that made Cleveland incredibly successful, and a landscape that quietly set it up for sprawl. And just as a side note, the river was once so polluted that it literally caught fire, which is not exactly a tourism slogan.
Nothing beats a ditch to holiday. The city with the burning river? How does that even happen?
But it did lead to major environmental reforms in the US, so at least something good came out of it. But to me, it's kinda crazy to think about polluting your main source of fresh water. But anyway, let's talk about the urban layout next. Chapter 2, the urban form. Let's start right here, in downtown. This is the most ordered part of Cleveland. You can clearly see public square, with avenues like Superior or Euclid Avenue extending outward and a grid centered around it. It's compact, readable, and still feels like the historic core. And visually, it holds up. Buildings like the Terminal Tower define the
Pretty.
skyline. When it opened in 1930, it reflected just how important Cleveland had become at the time. So downtown gives you a clear structure, but just a few blocks away that structure starts to break. And the reason is right here, the Cuyahoga River. Usually rivers cut fairly cleanly through a city, but this one, not really. It curves, it bends, and it creates this low-lying corridor known as the Flats.
I can't even see where the river goes. Where does it end? Where did it end already?
And this is where Cleveland was built to work. For decades, this valley was filled with steel mills, warehouses, rail yards, and shipping docks. Basically everything heavy industry needed. Raw materials came in via Lake Erie, were processed along the river, and then moved out again. Efficient for industry, not so much for urban clarity. Because once you follow the river, the grid starts to fall apart. Roads shift direction, bridges appear where they are needed, rail lines carve their own paths through the landscape, and you can still see that today. Even though much of the heavy industry has declined, the structure it left behind is still there. The river valley acts like a physical gap in the city, separating different areas from each other. On both sides of the valley, the land rises slightly. That's where neighborhoods developed, close enough to jobs, but with a bit of distance from the noise. The pollution, well, that was harder to avoid. Anyway, you get this layered effect. Industry in the low ground, residential areas above it, and downtown sitting right at the edge. Then later on, another layer gets added.
Oh, it's a wave breaker, right? Like it's rocks, I think. The line. But why is it so long? That's so weird.
Highways. Of course. Routes like I-90 cut across the city, linking suburbs to downtown. They improve regional access while also reinforcing some of those separations that were already there. So when you zoom out, the pattern becomes clear. A structured downtown, a river valley shaped almost entirely by industry, and a street network that adapts to both. Chapter
Looks very complex.
3. Car dependency and transit. Now let's talk about how you actually move through all of this, because the layout we just looked at has direct consequences. First of all, Cleveland is largely car dependent. The metro area is quite spread out, jobs are distributed across the region, and many daily trips are simply too long to comfortably walk or bike. So for a lot of people, the car becomes the default. And the infrastructure reflects that. Highways like I-90, I-71 and I-77 form a network around and through the city, making it relatively easy to get in and out of downtown by car, which works well until everyone does it at the same time. Now, public transit does exist. It's run by the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority, and it includes buses, light rail and a heavy rail line. When I hear heavy rail in the US, I'm always happy. It connects downtown directly to Cleveland Hopkins International Airport, which is actually pretty rare in the US. Amazing stuff. Then we also have the Health Line along Euclid Avenue from downtown to the huge medical complex in the east. This is a bus rapid transit system with dedicated lines, level boarding and frequent service. By US standards, it's genuinely solid, and you can feel that in certain parts of the city. Downtown, University Circle and a few surrounding neighborhoods are relatively easy to navigate without a car. Distances
It does look very like tight,
are short,
you know? But it's beautiful. Look at all the greenery as well. And the water and everything.
Streets are more walkable and transit is more frequent, but once you move outward, things change a bit. Transit coverage becomes thinner, distances increase, and the urban form shifts toward lower density, which
That looks really cool actually from far away.
brings us back to the earlier chapters. The flat geography allowed the city to spread, the industrial layout separated key areas, and the highway system reinforced outward growth. So today you get a split experience. In the core, alternatives to driving are possible. Across much of the region, they are harder to rely on. Cleveland isn't fully locked into car dependency, but it leans heavily in that direction. So, now we've unpacked Cleveland's city layout, it's time for something a bit more subjective. Welcome to Imperator's city rating. How would I personally rate the city in these 4 categories? Geography, urban form, car independence, and overall uniqueness. And while I go through mine, I would be really curious to hear your ratings as well. So feel free to drop them in the comments. Alright, let's rate Cleveland. Starting with geography, I would give it a 7 out of 10. Being on Lake Erie is a huge...
Honestly, well, I would even give it more like chess geography wise. It's next to water, it has a river in the middle, it looks very, you know,
advantage, and the Cuyahoga River, especially with that
it's pretty plain.
bendiness, is overall pretty interesting and made the city highly successful in its industrial past. Next up, urban form, 6 out of 10. Downtown is clear and structured, and you can still read the historic core pretty well, but the industrial valley, the highways, and the spread out development make the overall layout feel a bit fragmented. Car independence, 4 out of 10. There are some strong pieces, like the rail connection to the airport and the health line, but they don't fully cover the region. Outside the core, getting around with a car gets difficult pretty quickly. And finally, uniqueness, 8 out of 10. The combination of the lake, the industrial river valley, and the city's history gives Cleveland a really distinct identity. It's one of those places where the map tells a very specific story. So, overall, we have a solid 25 out of 40. Not perfect, but definitely a fascinating city and our first entry in the list. And I'm really curious, how would you rate it? Here is also the playlist to all the other cities I already covered on the channel. PS, you could also support me on Patreon, so I don't have to rely on dubious sponsors to keep the channel running. Thank you to everyone who already decided to support me over there. Thanks for watching and bye bye.
Well, I would love to know how you rate Cleveland. I think I've heard bad things about it. That might just be me though, but it does look really nice. It looks very chill, just chill. But the pollution thing kind of threw me off though. Either way, guys, thank you so much for joining me for this video. I really hope you found it interesting. Please do a like, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!